Unfolded Mysteries. Hello, Unfolded Mysteries family. Before we dive into today's video, I want to let you know that the names of the stories shared in this video have been changed to protect the privacy of individuals involved. The essence of each story remains intact, but any names mentioned are purely fictional. Respecting the privacy of individuals is of utmost importance to us, and we have taken this step to ensure that everyone's personal information is kept confidential. We appreciate your understanding and support in creating a safe and respectful space for everyone. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest videos. Now, let's jump into today's stories with the assurance that privacy is our top priority. Thank you for being a part of the Unfolded Mysteries community. In a town where the past clung to the present, a cemetery of whispered secrets lay hidden beneath the shroud of night. The ancient burial ground was a place of mystery, its gravestones standing as silent sentinels, guarding stories of the deceased for centuries. It was a cemetery that locals dared not approach after dark, fearing the paranormal legends that clung to its hallowed grounds. On a night when the moon was but a sliver and the stars seemed to hold their breath, a group of paranormal investigators, led by the fearless historian Robert, gathered at the cemetery's entrance. Robert had spent his life uncovering the hidden histories of the dead, and he believed that this graveyard held answers to the supernatural questions that had eluded him for years. With cameras and night vision equipment in hand, the investigators stepped through the ancient gate and into the cemetery's eerie stillness. The tombstones, their inscriptions long faded, seemed to beckon to them as if the spirits of the departed had stories they were yearning to share. As they ventured deeper into the cemetery, they stumbled upon a weathered mausoleum, its stone walls adorned with intricate carvings. Inside, they found relics of the past, old photographs, letters, and a dusty diary. The diary spoke of a secret society that had gathered in the cemetery under the cover of night, attempting to communicate with the spirits of the deceased. It was a tale of obsession and forbidden knowledge. Just as the investigators delved into the diary's pages, strange occurrences began to unsettle them. Their cameras captured strange mists weaving through the tombstones, and their audio recordings picked up unexplained whispers in the quiet night. It was as though the spirits were aware of their presence and were eager to make contact. Robert, the historian, grew even more determined to unravel the mysteries of the cemetery. He believed that the spirits held the key to the secret society's hidden knowledge, and he urged his team to press on, despite the growing unease that had settled upon them. The investigators ventured deeper into the cemetery's heart, where an eerie presence seemed to engulf them. They saw ghostly figures moving among the tombstones, their faces twisted with grief and longing. The air grew frigid, and an otherworldly howl filled the night. Suddenly, one of the investigators let out a blood-curdling scream. The CCTV footage captured a spectral figure, its outstretched hand reaching toward them, beckoning them closer. The entity seemed to beckon them to uncover the hidden secrets of the past before vanishing into the shadows. The investigators were torn between fear and curiosity, but Robert's determination remained unshaken. He believed that they were on the cusp of discovering the forbidden knowledge held by the secret society and the spirits of the cemetery. In the end, some of the investigators managed to escape the cemetery, forever marked by the unearthly events they had witnessed. But Robert, the relentless historian, remained within the burial ground, his mission to uncover the truth of the secret society unfulfilled. And so, the enigmatic cemetery continued to stand as a place of spectral enigmas, its secrets preserved in the chilling footage captured by the investigators' cameras. The site remained a bridge between the living and the dead, waiting for the next group of intrepid souls to unlock its mysteries and, perhaps, unveil the hidden knowledge that had eluded them. It was a dark and stormy night when 5 friends, Sarah, Mark, Jenny, Robert, and Lisa, embarked on a weekend getaway to celebrate Sarah's birthday. They had booked a historic Airbnb Hollywood Manor in the secluded woods of Whispering Pines. Little did they know that their choice would lead to a night of unspeakable horror. As they arrived at the manor, the imposing structure loomed out of the darkness, its Gothic architecture shrouded in ivy and mystery. The wind howled through the ancient trees, and a sense of unease settled over the group. The host, a somber man named Mr. Hawthorne, handed them the keys and warned them to be cautious. "The manor has a history," he said, his eyes filled with foreboding. "Some say it's haunted." The friends laughed it off, attributing his warning to a quirky attempt at creating atmosphere. They entered the manor, greeted by the creaking of floorboards and the faint, eerie whisper of the wind. The air inside felt heavy with a sense of foreboding. They explored the grand yet dimly lit rooms with their antique furniture and faded portraits of the manor's long-forgotten residents. The grand staircase led to a labyrinth of hallways, each one darker and more labyrinthine than the last. As they settled into their rooms, they couldn't help but notice the oppressive silence that enveloped the manor. Their evening began with laughter and camaraderie, but it soon took a sinister turn. The lights flickered and dimmed, and strange shadows seemed to move on their own. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and disembodied whispers filled the rooms. The friends dismissed it as their imagination running wild, blaming it on the eerie ambience of the manor. But as the night deepened, the haunting became more tangible. Doors slammed shut on their own, and the chill in the air was no longer just from the weather outside. Sarah, who had always been sensitive to the supernatural, began to feel a presence watching her. A pair of ghostly eyes seemed to follow her, appearing briefly in reflections in dark corners and in mirrors. Jenny, a skeptic, suggested they hold a seance to communicate with any spirits that might be present. They gathered in a candlelit room, their breath visible in the frigid air. The atmosphere grew tense, and as they called out to the spirits, a cold, bony hand brushed against Lisa's cheek. Panic erupted, and they fled the room, leaving the seance incomplete. It was clear that they were not alone in Hollywood Manor, and whatever dwelled there was not friendly. The friends decided to leave, but as they reached the front door, it slammed shut, trapping them inside. They were forced to return to their rooms, the eerie presence growing stronger with each passing minute. Sarah, feeling the weight of the supernatural world pressing down on her, reached out to Mr. Hawthorne for help, but he was cryptic in his response, only telling her that they needed to confront the spirits before they could leave. As the group reassembled in the candlelit room, they heard a mournful wail, a lament that seemed to come from deep within the manor. The room grew icy cold, and the candles flickered wildly as a figure began to materialize in the center. It was the ghostly apparition of a woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and her dress tattered and blood-stained. She beckoned them forward, and in a chilling voice, she revealed her tragic tale. She had been a servant of the manor, wronged and betrayed in life, and her spirit was forever bound to the place. The room seemed to blur and distort, and the friends felt as though they were transported to the past, witnessing the events that had led to the woman's demise. It was a harrowing and heartbreaking experience, and they realized that she sought not to harm them, but to share her story to find redemption for her soul. With the revelation of her story, the manor seemed to sigh with relief. The oppressive presence that had haunted them began to dissipate, and the friends felt a sense of closure. The spirit of the woman thanked them and slowly faded into the darkness. As dawn broke, the manor was quiet, the supernatural occurrences having ceased. The friends left Hollywood Manor forever changed by their night of terror. The legend of the haunted Airbnb spread far and wide, a tale of a birthday celebration that had turned into a night of unspeakable horror, and a reminder that some places carry a darkness that can only be exorcised through the sharing of long-buried secrets. David had always been a workaholic, and when his job sent him on a last-minute business trip, he was determined to make the most of it. The quaint coastal town of Marigold Cove, known for its serene beaches and picturesque landscapes, seemed like the perfect place for some respite. He booked an Airbnb, a cozy cottage nestled among the pines, hoping for a peaceful and productive stay. As he arrived at the cottage, the salt-laden breeze filled the air, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the coastal landscape. The cottage itself was idyllic, its white walls and blue shutters blending seamlessly with the picturesque surroundings. However, as he entered, an unshakable sense of unease settled in his chest. The cottage was quaint but dimly lit, and the decor was a curious mix of vintage and modern. The paintings on the walls depicted forlorn faces, and the furniture seemed to carry a heavy history. David couldn't help but notice the pervasive smell of salt water and an eerie hush that clung to the rooms. As night fell, he decided to settle in. He turned on the television, but the channels were filled with static, and the sound was distorted, making it unwatchable. Frustrated, he switched it off and attempted to use his laptop, only to find that the Wi-Fi signal was weak and intermittent, making work nearly impossible. Resigned to the situation, David decided to get some rest. He climbed into the antique four-poster bed, but the mattress was lumpy and uncomfortable. As he closed his eyes, the night seemed to grow even darker, the silence oppressive and absolute. Then he heard it, a soft, mournful humming that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Startled, he sat up, his heart pounding. The sound grew louder, a haunting melody that echoed through the cottage, but the source remained elusive. David reached for his phone to call the Airbnb host, but it had no signal. He felt trapped, and as the humming continued, it began to take on a spectral quality, as if it was being sung by an ethereal presence. Fear gnawed at him, and he left the bedroom, determined to find the source of the eerie humming. The sound led him to a small, dusty attic door at the end of a narrow hallway. Hesitantly, he pushed it open and climbed the rickety stairs into the dimly lit space. In the attic, he discovered an old gramophone, its horn crackling with static. A record spun on the turntable, playing a mournful melody from another era. But what chilled him to the bone was the ghostly figure seated before the gramophone, her back to him, her long, disheveled hair obscuring her face. As David approached, the figure turned slowly, her eyes empty and filled with sorrow. She extended a bony hand toward him, her fingers clawed and skeletal. In a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the afterlife, she whispered, "Help me." Terror gripped David as he stumbled back down the attic stairs, fleeing from the apparition. He could feel her presence following him, her cold breath on his neck. He made his way to the front door, only to find it locked and unyielding. Panic surged through him as he desperately tried to escape the haunted cottage. Hours passed, but the cottage seemed to have become a prison, its rooms shifting and distorting like a malevolent maze. David's phone remained lifeless, the Wi-Fi signal non-existent, and the spectral humming continued to echo through the air, growing louder and more oppressive. As dawn broke, David was found by a neighbor who had heard his frantic screams. The police arrived and helped him leave the cottage, but the ghostly figure remained, her mournful presence lingering in the coastal air. In the days that followed, David's story of the malevolent rental in Marigold Cove spread through the town. The cottage was shunned by the locals, considered cursed and uninhabitable. David, forever scarred by his ordeal, could never shake the memory of the haunting presence that had turned his business trip into a nightmarish encounter with the supernatural. Officer John Anderson was known for his rational and unshakable demeanor, but even the bravest of hearts can be tested when confronted with the unexplainable. It all began when he decided to take a well-deserved break and booked a secluded Airbnb rental in the serene town of Pinevale. John had recently solved a difficult case, and the constant stress of his job was taking a toll on him. He yearned for a peaceful getaway, a place where he could rest and recharge. The Airbnb listing for an idyllic cabin in Pinevale seemed perfect. The cabin was nestled in a forest clearing, and the serene surroundings were just what John needed. His host, a kindly woman named Mrs. Reynolds, greeted him with a warm smile. She showed him around the cozy cabin, explaining its features and leaving him with the key. As John settled into the cabin, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air was heavy with silence, and shadows seemed to move in unnatural ways. The atmosphere was eerily still, almost as if the cabin itself was holding its breath. That night, John retired to his bedroom, his service pistol within arm's reach. He had always been cautious, even in his private life. Just as he began to drift off to sleep, he was jolted awake by the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. John's instincts kicked in, and he reached for his weapon. As he moved cautiously down the hallway, he found the front door slightly ajar. A shiver ran down his spine. He was certain he had locked it. He ventured outside into the moonlit forest, but there was no one to be seen. The night was strangely quiet, devoid of the usual sounds of nature. John couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The following night, the strange occurrences escalated. John was awakened by a whisper that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was a voice, faint and distant, repeating a name, Abigail. It sent a chill down his spine. Abigail was a name from his past, a case that had haunted him for years. It was an unsolved mystery, and John had never forgiven himself for not being able to find the missing girl. As he continued to hear the name, he realized that the voice seemed to be emanating from an old, dusty journal he had found on the cabin's bookshelf. The journal belonged to Mrs. Reynolds' daughter, who had vanished years ago. John had seen pictures of the girl, and she bore a striking resemblance to the ghostly apparition that had haunted his nights in the cabin. It was as though the spirit of Abigail was trying to communicate with him. The cabin's haunting escalated each night, with objects moving on their own, strange shadows appearing on the walls, and eerie voices whispering in the dark. John, always the rational cop, began to lose his grip on reality. One night, he awoke to find the apparition of Abigail standing at the foot of his bed. She seemed to be pleading with him, her eyes filled with sadness. It was then that he knew he had to solve the mystery, to bring closure to both Abigail's spirit and his own tormented soul. With the help of the journal, John pieced together the final moments of Abigail's life. He discovered that she had come to the cabin to seek refuge, only to be met with tragedy. The journal contained cryptic clues, pointing to a hidden room in the cabin. As he entered the hidden room, he uncovered a shocking truth. Mrs. Reynolds had been responsible for Abigail's disappearance, and the cabin held the key to unlocking the dark secret. It was a chilling revelation that shook John to his core. With the evidence in hand, he contacted the local authorities, and Mrs. Reynolds was arrested. The cabin was no longer haunted, and the restless spirit of Abigail seemed to find peace at last. John returned to his job as a police officer, forever changed by the haunting experience in the Airbnb rental. He had not only solved a long cold case, but also faced the supernatural head-on. It was a reminder that even the most rational minds could be tested by the unknown, and sometimes the answers lay in the darkest corners of the past. We hope you enjoyed those spine-tingling tales as much as we did. If you're still feeling a little spooked, don't worry, you're not alone. But before we say goodbye, we have a few things to ask of you. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you found these stories as chilling as we did. It really helps our channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already. There are plenty more eerie adventures waiting for you right here, so you don't want to miss out. Share this video with your friends and fellow thrill seekers. After all, spooky stories are best enjoyed with company, right? That's a wrap for today, but stay tuned for more bone-chilling content in the future. Until next time, remember to keep your flashlight handy, your wits about you, and always be ready for the unexpected. Thanks for joining us on this haunting journey. Take care and may your nights be eerily entertaining. See you in the next video.